like last night, whatever. They lost the game. They got off to a shit start. Durant comes back. They immediately seized control of the game into the third quarter, and then he left the game. They were still up 4. Kyrie had a bad turnover. Lowry hit a 3, and the game changed on a dime. So they lost.
Yeah.
Kyrie was terrible. He had 7 turnovers. Meanwhile, Lowry was like 7 for 9 from 3. Like sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be fine. They're probably gonna lose tonight because they're shorthanded, and Philly's a tough team, and the Philly O's, and that's one.
Have they decided what's happening with KD? Is he out for sure?
He's out tonight. He didn't travel with the team.
This is
I don't think
insane.
they've decided how long he's out for. And I don't even want to get into the COVID stuff. Like, our fans are so soft. Like, yes, it would suck that he left the game last night, but like, COVID, like that didn't force us to have like 25 turnovers again.
Yep.
The same things that plague us with or without him showed up. So like, analyze the game, stop crying. We've benefited from COVID stuff ourselves. So it's just, they need more players. Like right now, how many guys would you say are good on the Nets? 4, and then they have like a half player in Green and half player in Brown that are like kind of good, and then everybody else kind of stinks.
It's worse than that because Green has been a phenomenal. Like the problem with Green is that they're not letting him play the role he should be playing. He should be the veteran off the bench. He's what everybody thinks Jared Dudley was. He's actually really good and been really good for us and could have been better for us if we played him at the 4. If we brought him off the bench to play minutes at the 4 and back up the 4.
Let's address that. And then that ties into Nash. Because you say they play them. No. He plays him. This is what mind boggles me about Nash. They go out and sign Pell, who I know is nothing special, right? He was available for a reason. But he is a live body center, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They were playing Reggie Perry, not an NBA player.
Nope.
Let's say when Kevin Durant is in the lineup, they now have, in theory, a starting 4 and a starting 5 with him and DeAndre. Why is Green not coming into games with Pell when the other team is playing size?
See,
and
that's
on top of it.
But that's the thing we don't know yet. Pell may not know how to run. Like sometimes you see dudes and you look at dudes on tape.
Basketball.
Nah, that dude may not know how to play, yo. Like
then they shouldn't have signed him. That's a separate story.
Exactly. Like yo, first of all, I just want to say I'm a Pell supporter. His agent's my boy, BJ. Or I think he's still his agent. He should be because I see BJ celebrating. And BJ Bass, by the way, great dude. And but this is a fringe guy. There was better options out there, and we didn't even look at them. And again, it brings us back to this conversation. Like, this dude does not want to sign 4s at all. Like, he has a philosophy, and his philosophy is what he's going to carry on. Like, we thought it was the coaching. It's not the coaching. All of this starts with Sean Marks.
Hold on.
He's picking these players.
So within that frame, right, of what Nash is given, it doesn't make any sense that he's not playing the one guy who is a live body, tall enough, strong enough to hold his ground somewhat as a center. Let Green play the 4. And instead what he's doing is he's putting Green in as the 5. They're undersized at the 4. And then they're switching their everything. So they're
switch everything with. The Nets are the least switchable team.
It makes no sense. He's switching Kyrie onto Siakam.
But
obviously he's going to get pounded and he's going to score.
Of course,
we're going to scramble.
But you're missing 2 parts, right? In the last game, every time, like, they would make the Nets switch, and every time any player got on Kyrie, they went. It was like, as soon as Kyrie gets on you on defense, go to the basket. And it worked every time because there's nothing behind Kyrie to stop Like Kyrie
Right.
has
So
always been this player. None of this is new. Kyrie has always been this player. That's why they
yes,
had
so
Tristan Thompson behind. I mean,
this is why it makes even less sense. You're taking the guys that are at least somewhat tall, and now they have to shade out to the perimeter because they're on guards and shooters, leaving even less behind him. When you talk to your children, do you talk to all of them the same?
can't.
Probably not,
They're
right? They
different.
probably all respond to different parenting techniques.
True.
Nash looks at the opponent every night and says, we're just going to switch everything. There's no strategy based on the opponent. It's the same shit every night.
Listen,
And a
this
good coach
happened
like Nick
under
Nurse sees
Atkinson,
it.
and I used to lose my mind. The part that you're
Atkinson's a
missing is
way
the
better
second
coach
part.
than
The part that you're missing is the second part, and it's the reason why Atkinson isn't here. The Nets are like the Yankees. It's everything is controlled by Cashman. Cashman wanted a manager that he could put in the dugout that he could basically zap down what to do from his suite. And the way this team plays, there's nothing new to what Nash does to Atkinson. I don't get frustrated at Nash anymore because he does exactly the same things that I've been yelling about for the past few years. This is Sean Marks' team, right? And he has more control. Huh? Say it again.
It's his franchise.
It's his. The owner made him a governor, made him the co-governor, which means he calls the shots from the very top to the very bottom. And part of it is deserved. But the thing that I'm seeing is that this is the same offense, but it just has the greatest three scorers in it ever. This is the same defense, but it has horrible unathletic players, horrible defensive unathletic players who don't have length with it. And then lastly, the roster construction makes it almost impossible. If you need to get your best players on the floor, and this is the only, like, I had my morning time with Harden. I love having Harden now. The problem with Harden is that if they knew they were getting him over the summer, they did nothing to prepare to have James Harden on your team. If James Harden needs a PJ Tucker, James Harden needs a Robert Covington, James Harden needs a Clinton Capella. He needs those guys around him.
Well, I think the biggest thing that screwed the Nets was the Dinwiddie injury, because they could have found a first-round pick for him. I mean, I saw Woj yesterday saying that teams want to trade for him now because they want his bird rights. Like, teams know, like an ACL, like it is what it is. He'll be fine next year.
Yeah.
And they want his bird rights. So I think he would have went in the trade and we would have kept Jared. And now you're talking buyout market. You're just looking for like the other Morris twin, the one on the Lakers.
Right. That type of a player.
It's easier. Now we still need that player and we need the center.
And that has always been the reason why I didn't want to do the Harden trade, is because after you do the Harden trade, you're gonna be the greatest show on earth in the season, but in the postseason, you're going to fall the way that every Rockets team that D'Antoni has ever coached has fallen. You're gonna fall the way that every Phoenix Suns team, like the Phoenix Suns teams had two superstars and one very good all-star and a great supporting cast. That team had a great supporting class, but it could not get out of playoffs because when it came down to it, they had zero stops in this team. It is shocking. It is shocking.
The thing is, though, you can't look at it as like they have to win it this year. As obviously, like I want them to, and I want them to go as far as they can. But
here's
again,
why
we talked about this the week or last year, that they're guaranteed at least next year to do this again. So all the guys are under contract. They're gonna get at least one more year.
Right, but it could get worse. So
I doubt that will happen.
All right, so the tax bill comes up. Let me show you how this could go really bad. The tax bill comes up, and I've worked for very insanely rich people, and They all have the same thing. They're all cool when everything starts, and they trust you and they believe you. Everything's great. Oh, everything's wonderful. But if they go down like dogs in the second round to, I don't know, the Celtics, they're not going to lose to the Celtics. Celtics don't match up well with us. We'll slap the Celtics.
Yeah.
But let's say we go down in the second round to some arbitrary team, or even worse, some young team that's playing hard, or like Toronto is the 8th or 7th seed, and we have to play them in the first round. We could lose.
Zero chance.
Toronto's
beating us in a 7-game series.
I doubt it too. They
barely beat. It took Durant barely playing in the worst performance of the season.
They scrape by us. Look, obviously the fear is in Milwaukee, and even them, I'm not scared of them.
You know what it is for us is that we're not used to rooting for a team that, like, we were the underdogs, right? Like, when the Nets started getting fun in Brooklyn, they were the underdog team that played their ass off every night.
Mm-hmm.
We've now morphed into the team that everyone plays their ass off against us, and we're not used to it. Like, every time they get down 10-2, I'm like, fuck this guy, fuck that guy. And then, like, 10 minutes later, they have the lead. So it's we're not accustomed to it. And we fear these teams. Like, earlier in the year, I'm like, I wouldn't want to play Atlanta in the first round. Well, now that the sample size is growing, like, Atlanta's under 500. So we start to fear these teams because we fear the expectations. Nobody like that is knocking us out in the first round.
Yeah, all the teams that could beat us are in the West, really. Like, even
Milwaukee has a shot to beat us for sure. And I would still even say, like, Miami, if they got their shit together and got in, could be, and Philly probably too. But, like,
so that's the good example right there. Like, so Miami beats us in the playoffs. It's just, let me make my point, and we'll keep going. Miami beats us in the playoffs. Joe Tsai flips out because his tax bill is going to be over $100 million. And if they don't win a championship and they lose ugly to a team that doesn't have 3 superstars, questions are going to start being asked. Friendships are going to change. Fingers are going to point. And that's when things get ugly. And that's when bad decisions turns into worse decisions. And my biggest fear is this thing falls apart next year if we don't win this year. And
I would say we don't have to win this year. I think to take pressure off of everybody, even just getting there, I think they would like, because the comparisons would become easy, right? They look like the Heat team, right? They got there, they lost the first one, they had to, like, the Nets don't need wholesale change, right? We have to tinker at, like, a couple specific spots. So I think just getting there, and, you know, even if we lose to LA in 5 or 6 or whatever, I think would be a good step for us. And we'd say, okay, we've gelled, we've seen where our weaknesses are. Now we have an entire offseason, a draft, free agency trades, all those things to kind of fill out what
we have no exactly. We have no picks. We have no cap room.
We got a pick this year.
We have a pick in this year's draft?
Yeah, because it's a swap with Houston.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
So we have our pick.
I thought
we can trade it after the draft.
After is a swap. But they can't trade it.
They can after they make the selection.
Oh, in the middle of the season, not at the end.
No, right on draft night they can do it. They have to just select in the spot and then trade the player's rights after the fact, so they can draft for the team.
Yeah,
they free in principle, so they're not limited in flexibility. And I think if Wojnarowski's saying teams are calling about Dinwiddie, who I believe is making like $13 million this year, we're probably going to get a bad contract back, but a bad contract back that helps us. And who gives a shit, because our cap is screwed anyway. We're going to be fine, bro. Go listen to last week's episode. Like, we can't overreact, and I'm just as guilty of this. Like, we just can't overreact to every loss. Obviously, we have our deficiencies, right? But
I'm not happy it wins. I'm not happy at wins. You know why I can't enjoy this shit? I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy because the reason why I wasn't happy is because I saw the way they looked at each other and what they said in the post game. And they were like, they called it unorthodox defense.
Yeah, that's yeah. No,
Like
that's great, right?
that's code word for them saying, "Oh, we are going to slap these dudes in the playoffs. If they get to the finals, this is not a finals defense."